What's up, guys? Welcome to the Saturday show. Now, on Saturdays, I like to take a look back through the week of Newswave, see what you guys had to say based around the different topics that we talked about. It was a pretty busy week. There was a lot of different things taking place, whether it was the MPD sales from December showing the Switch really pushing forward and Smash Bros. Ultimate pretty much taking over that entire month and helping to push the Switch to be the best-selling system of 2018. And then, of course, we saw Resident Evil 2 drop and release yesterday, which is really good, by the way. I've been playing it for a bit now, and I'm liking so far what I'm playing. If you played that one-shot demo and you liked it, you definitely want to jump in because there's a lot of stuff to like past that first 30 minutes. I know, it's hard to believe, right? Yeah, it's looking really good. As always, guys, enjoy these videos. Do it the like button, it does help out. We're actually going to start today with some quick news. We're going to start with an interview that Furukawa actually had talking about the idea of a price cut for the Switch or a successor, I guess a new Switch. It's a topic people keep talking about, right? Price cut to help move units, which a price cut helps move units. It really does. The PS4 had a pretty large price cut in South Korea recently, and there were tons of pictures of people waiting outside stores to get their hands on a PlayStation 4. I know it sounds crazy, but it was pretty expensive there, and then they cut it by like 30 to 40%, and people are waiting in lines. Of course, a new system of some kind, revision, successor, something, generally also spike sales. But this is actually what Furukawa had to say. It is an extremely ambitious goal. This was in response to being asked about that 20 million units goal that they still have set up for that fiscal year that ends at the end of this March coming up, so in a few months, but worthwhile achievement. So we will maintain this goal. Nintendo Switch is our primary sales objective, and we are not considering a successor or a price cut at this time. And again, that was Furukawa talking with Senkai News in Japan, and it's an interesting thing to see this. So here's the thing about Nintendo that I feel like we've talked about before, but I'll say it again. If they're not ready to announce something, it doesn't exist. They don't want you to think about it, especially a successor. We went over this with like the DS family, or it's like with DSi or DS Lite, and we saw it there, we saw it DSi. They don't talk about it until it's ready, and then all of a sudden it exists. They don't want us to know if something new is coming down the pipeline yet, if it's not ready to release like next month or the month after or something. We've heard about Switch revisions, whether it's a Pro or a Mini or all kinds of stuff, and if it's not going to be launching soon, like maybe it's slated for the back half of this year, they're not going to talk about it until like after E3, right? Like if it's coming out in like, let's just pretend it's coming out in October, they'll talk about it at the end of September. They really, really will. They're not gonna hurt themselves in the long run now by announcing it and having people hold off. They need Switch systems to sell, and of course, this was translated by Nintendo Everything. It seems to say successor. Of course, they're not going to announce the Switch successor right now because we're almost 2 years in. Why would they do that? Revision, yes, I could see that. Part of the Switch family, whether it's a mini or a slightly more powerful Switch, maybe a bigger screen or a brighter screen, or who knows, all kinds of stuff they could do. That's something I still think could happen. And the price cut is the one that surprised me a bit, because when there is a revision of some kind, it would either be cheaper or more expensive, and maybe they're talking about the current Switch and saying, we don't have to price cut that one because we'll either introduce a more expensive one to make that one look cheaper, or we'll be introducing a mini or something that's just in general cheaper when it comes out. So there's a lot of things to take away from here, but it does sound like PR speak saying, we're not ready to reveal anything yet, so no price cuts or no successors or anything yet. And starting off the week with Monday, we talked about the studio that will port Mortal Kombat 11 to the Switch, Shiver Entertainment, who also worked on Scribblenauts for the Switch. So while no one has really seen what Shiver Entertainment can do with a project size of Mortal Kombat 11, this could be the time they attempt to prove themselves. Vegeta says, Shiver Studios, never really heard of them. However, never heard of Panic Button either until I played Injustice on it should be PS Vita, not PSP, PS Vita. Never heard of Hugh Jackman until X-Men either. Also never heard of Bungie really until Halo, despite trying out Oni. Oh, cool. Will Shiver Studios make a name for themselves? I hope so. And that is a good point, because if they do well, it's pretty clear it's lucrative to be in the Switch port business, as Panic Button and Iron Galaxy and Virtuos have all shown. Panic Button has become like kind of famous because of their Switch ports. They keep taking on bigger and bigger projects, and we'll see what they do with Doom, which we've seen what they've done with the previous Doom, so I assume Doom Eternal is going to play similarly, or maybe even better, since it's kind of being worked on together with it, like it's being co-developed, so it's kind of all going along together. So I think if we'll see if they can prove themselves and Mortal Kombat 11 comes out and it plays well. It maybe looks a little worse or is a lower resolution, but it's still 60 frames per second. It's still an enjoyable experience. Kind of like how Tekken was on the PSP and it still played pretty well. And then you also had, of course, Tekken on the consoles. People would go back and forth between those at tournaments all the time. I watched it happen at tournaments at different stores that we would run. So it would be cool to see that. And it's really up to Shiver Entertainment if they're up for the challenge. I will say, going through the bios of the people who actually, like the biographies of people who are running that place that's right on their site, sounds like they've been around for a while, so they have the managerial experience to get a project like this done. It's just going to come down to how friendly Mortal Kombat 11 moves from the other systems to the Switch and what kind of cutbacks they have to make. They've already talked about some, but we'll see how it looks when they unveil it. Tuesday, we saw Square Enix file for a trademark called HD 2D, which could point to more games in the same type of style as Octopath Traveler. We also saw a rumor floating around of Fallout 76 going free-to-play, which was shot down by Bethesda later on that day. So there were tons of different suggestions in the comments for games that could be done in the HD 2D, and I saw a few that I liked. These two were really cool. Daniel mentioned Final Fantasy Tactics HD 2D. There we go. And then we said Skills mentioned Mario RPG HD 2D. That one stuck out. Final Fantasy Tactics. Look, we need another Final Fantasy Tactics. I don't know what Square is doing with this thing. Get another Final Fantasy Tactics out there because I'll buy it and I'll be playing that thing like crazy. It works really well as a handheld game, by the way. I mean, yeah, the PlayStation 1 version obviously is a classic, but when I could play that on like the PSP, it worked so much better as a handheld game. And when they brought out Tactics Advanced on the Game Boy Advance, I played way too much of that game. So if they can get Final Fantasy Tactics in the Octopath Traveler style, maybe they change it up a little bit, but it's still that HD 2D. If they get something like that out, I'm in for Tactics like day one. That would be amazing. I know a lot of people saw Mario RPG. They also saw Chrono Trigger, and who knows about Chrono Trigger, but Mario RPG seemed insane years and years ago, right? Because it seemed like Nintendo was setting off to do their own RPGs with the Mario and Luigi characters, with what? Mario, Luigi, Superstar Saga, and other handheld RPGs they did. And they also did Paper Mario, which fell off a cliff after the GameCube version, which I still think is the best Paper Mario that they have created, is the GameCube one. So what was interesting to me when I thought about that was that they have done collaborative work now with Ubisoft where they just lent them the IPs for Mario and all of Mushroom Kingdom and everything. Yeah, go ahead and make this. And if they could do something like that with Square, that would be amazing, especially with this HD 2D kind of setup, and you throw in like all the Mario characters and everything. You pull characters like Geno and other people, Mallow, I guess, that Square, or maybe they just make a whole new one. That would be one of those like earth-shaking announcements, is like Super Mario RPG 2. That would get people like falling over in their chairs. So that would be cool to see. Or Final Fantasy Tactics. That would be a lesser announcement, like, not as exciting for a lot of people, but I would be really excited for a new Tactics in that art style. Wednesday, we talked about the massive December Nintendo had in the MPD sales charts, which saw Smash Bros. Ultimate top, and at the end of December, the Switch wound up being the best-selling console for all of 2018. Slurp says, imagine what the sales would have been if Pokemon Gen 8 came out this year instead of Let's Go. That would have been crazy. So Let's Go sold well initially, but I noticed in the sales charts and even in Japan, like Japan is a weird place for it to fall off. It did it. It fell off. Like, it really hasn't sold as well as previous ones going forward. Of course, the install base for the Switch is less by a fair margin still, obviously, compared to the 3DS and the DS and everything, but it has fallen off a bit, and I do wonder if that's just because it's not that Gen 8 Pokemon. And while you are correct, if it was Gen 8, I would have been interested to see the sales. However, Gen 8 is coming. It's this year. It's later this year. So think about it that way. Gen 8 is months away, not a year away. It's months away now because we're into 2019. And I think that will have more of a hype effect in Japan, especially in the US as well. As Pokemon, there is a lot of excitement around Pokemon when it does come out, especially in the US, but in Japan, I know. That's going to be interesting to see, especially if they can pair it up with some other game that would also draw a lot of hype. Smash is going to be hard to top, right? But Pokemon Gen 8 with something else. We've heard about this rumored Star Fox game by Retro, right? We've heard about the rumored 2D Zelda game. There's a lot of things on the table that Nintendo needs to attempt to introduce to us if it is in fact coming. You could also have Animal Crossing in there, right? Throw Animal Crossing in there in the early parts of like that fall season. If you can get out in the summer, that's great. But they have the pieces here to actually do much better than last year. And it was the best-selling system last year in the MPDs. And they can do better this year. So, wow, it's going to be something else if all of this stuff comes together. But we just saw, of course, that delay of Metroid Prime 4 showing that not everything in the background works out. So we'll have to see if they actually have some release dates for us soon, I guess. Well, we'll see. Thursday went over an indie games presentation from Nintendo that included a release date for Wargroove as well as a new SteamWorld RPG alongside several other new indie games. We also saw Activision continue to double down on crazy microtransactions, which now include a smiley face reticule for $2. Eileen says, soon Activision will sell you the whole HUD for $5 in the next Call of Duty game. See, you're giving them ideas now. And trust me, at this point, I don't doubt that Activision would do that right now, because I'll tell you one thing, I think there is some panic at Activision right now because of what's going on with Activision and Bungie splitting, and I think there's a bit of concern. We hear what's happening with Blizzard where they're cutting back on costs, they're assigning a lot of mobile games to them apparently. Activision seems like they're scrambling a bit right now, and if they can keep squeezing dollars out of people who are playing Call of Duty, they would do that. It sounds like a joke. However, if I went back to you right now, when you're playing, let's say, Call of Duty Finest Hour, someone tweeted that to me today, or yesterday, when they showed me that they had picked up Finest Hour on the GameCube from GameStop, and it came in the case. That was really cool. Let me go back then and tell you after you got that and you're playing it for the first week, I'll say, oh, wait until Activision attempts to sell you that reticule that you're using there for $1 or $2 in the future, and you would have laughed. So I don't count out anything. The HUD, your health bar, all of the guns, who knows? I'm serious. We're to the point now where nothing's off the table for Activision. So get ready, because I don't think these microtransaction things, it's not going to get better. I actually think with Activision, it's going to get worse because of their position right now. Finally, on Friday, we talked about an interesting patent from Nintendo that showed 3D images on your TV that would work with small glasses and head tracking, but to be honest, not much mattered that day outside of Metroid Prime 4, and it getting seemingly delayed indefinitely, at least for now, until they have a chance to get everything worked out, as they've restarted pretty much all development on it. Maybe they've saved a few things, but they've restarted, and Retro Studio is now going to be heading the project. Obi says, I wonder if Metroid Prime 4 will come out before Final Fantasy VII Remake, even though development is being restarted. That would be embarrassing for Square. Now, I do think, as much as we just saw Prime 4 have this weird development issue where they had to restart it, it's clear that they were trying to have a studio influenced by Japanese culture attempt to make a Western game, which wasn't working out. So yeah, but as far as we can tell right now, which just seems crazy, Retro approached Nintendo about it and showed them a demo. And that's why they're doing it now. Not because Nintendo went to them and said, you're working on Metroid Prime 4. It's almost like Retro saw what was happening and said, we can do that better. Let's just do it real quick. Put a demo together, an idea, a vision, put it in front of Nintendo, and now they have the entire project. And Nintendo was willing to scrap development, about 2 years worth of development, to make sure Metroid Prime 4 is done right. And there is some respect there, obviously, and they were super transparent because they know that the fans obviously matter in this case when it comes to Prime. The game's never sold tremendously well. Definitely not compared to Nintendo's other projects, but the fan base is very loyal when it comes to the Prime series, so it feels like Nintendo doesn't want to let them down. So they scrap it, they go back, they get Retro, and I'm not kidding, there is a chance that it could come out before Final Fantasy VII Remake, as crazy as that sounds. However, basically it's a race at this point to, I would say, 2021? See, Final Fantasy VII Remake could come out next year in 2020, and Metroid Prime will not. So if they get it out then, there you go. But if it starts getting up there and we get to 2021, then I'm going to start looking to see which trailers start dropping first and which one does come out first. What wouldn't shock me, though, is if they came out in the same year, whether one is in the beginning and then one is at the end. Like, maybe they both did happen to come out in 2021 somehow. Maybe Square would drop it in the beginning and then Metroid Prime comes out right at the end, so basically 2022. That would still be kind of embarrassing on Final Fantasy VII Remake's part, but I have a feeling 7 Remake is not going to be episodic anymore. I think it's just going to be one full game. Oh, no, if it's episodic, yeah, no, then in that case, you would see Prime come out probably before all of the episodes are complete. It's weird that we're talking about this because that was announced back in 2015, but I think they had their own issue, similar to Prime, where they had to scrap a lot of stuff and restart, so it can happen to any company. It really can. I mean, we see Microsoft with something like Crackdown, for example. We saw Sony and everybody start to kind of mess around with Last Guardian, and eventually that got out. But it's interesting to see these kind of things happen, and it's not like any one company wouldn't run into this at some point anyway. They all have, and at this point, it's just Metroid Prime 4 was the latest victim to the restart dev cycle. But we'll see. Now, I am curious. I wonder if is that something that people should be betting on at this point? Final Fantasy VII Remake first or Metroid? I don't know. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for the Saturday show. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit the like button. It does help out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about. I'm sure a lot of you still are talking about Metroid Prime 4, so let me know down below which one comes out first, Final Fantasy VII Remake or Metroid Prime 4. Very interesting stuff there. Or what about Activision? You think it's going to get worse with those microtransactions? Because I think it will. I don't think it's going to get better. I think they'll continue trying to find things to sell you and nickel and dime with because they don't have Destiny anymore, and that was a pretty big revenue stream for them. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.